Up in the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to Career Coach Office Hours for August 6th, 2021. Woohoo! I've got a number of questions from people already that I'm going to address today. I also have an announcement, but I also want to put something in chat. Um, and I'll just simply say, ask questions. And say hi. I love hearing from you folks. And I've got an announcement to start off with and saying, I tried an experiment with supporting Vikram. Welcome. Thanks for saying hi. I appreciate it. And I'll just simply say if you've got questions for me, you put it into chat. And my announcement for today is beginning this Tuesday, I'm adding another episode of Career Coach Office Hours to answer questions from people. So if you want to get a question into the queue, send it to me before the show if you can, as an email at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. In the subject line, put the comment office hours or Career Coach Office Hours, something that lets me know that you've got a question, because my Gmail account gets bombarded with a lot of stuff related to my podcast and YouTube channel. So just feel free to do that. Oh, from 1992. Vikram's told me that he's known me since 1992. And someone's back looking for a change. So he'll let me know about that a little bit later, I'm sure. Here, I answer questions from job hunters designed to help you with your job search. And it could be with hiring more effectively, managing and leading, resolving workplace related issues. That's the kind of coaching I do. That's how I define career coaching for me. And I know a lot of coaches focus in on career change. I do that as well because my background was in executive search for so many years, and I know how to help people find work, hire better, lead better, manage better, and be more effective in the workplace. Wow, Vikram from Bangalore. Welcome. And let me start off with the first question today. And again, if you have a question, you can put it into chat. If it comes to you later on, after I'm off of office hours, you can email it to me. Again, the address to send it to is thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. Okay, here's scenario number one. On Tuesday, HR said, your salary package is being routed for approval. Once I have the approved package, I'll call you to conduct the job offer. That's good news. So it's now Friday, and I asked for another update, but no response. Will I get the offer? Don't know, but they were pretty clear that they're going to be in touch with you once the paperwork is done. The way to handle this kind of scenario is really very simple. All you do is, at the right time, at some point, what you do is you mention, hey, I know you're going to get in touch with me at the time that the offer is coming through or has been approved. Do you have a sense of when that might be? And I know it could be delayed, but do you have a sense it's going to be in 1 day, 1 week, 1 month? Just give me an idea of what it is so I can push people away, because I'm being approached about other situations and my preference is joining your firm, but I just want to make sure I'm addressing, I don't want to be surprised and be let down. So could you give me a sense of the timeline? And normally you'll get a response to that kind of message. And if you don't, the way to follow up the time after that is to say, are you okay? That's the subject line to the message. And I know it sounds corny, but it works. Nice French cut. Oh, I'm not sure what you're referring to, Pavan, but okay, I'll take a compliment. I hope it was a compliment and not snark. So I'll just close out that segment by saying, you're in a situation where they've gone dark on you and they're not responding. So the idea is to flush it up by asking, are you okay? So that's question number one. Let's see now. Question number 2. Oh, yes, I like this one. I recently had the hiring manager take a phone call during my interview, reducing my time to 10 minutes from 30. The final interview was the same manager on a different day. He didn't show up for the interview at all and requested I circle back with the panel before meeting with me one final time. This sounds like a red flag to me. What are your thoughts? So let me just start by saying you're not at final interview stage. And for some reason, he's either stalling for time to get you in front of more people to evaluate, or a red flag showed up in your background in some aspect of the interview, and he or she wants it to be re-reviewed. So they're not prepared to go further yet, and you've been kicked back down another step before they're going to get to final interview. Now, is it a red flag? I interpret the red flag as there being a problem. And if you think back to previous interviews, was there something that was a little bit off that showed up during the interview? And thus, if you think back and identify that moment or moments, those are going to be the things that they're going to zero in on in the course of this interview with the panel again. So don't hesitate to re-review. Don't be surprised. They want you to go back, and thus they're not ready to make the offer yet, unfortunately. And they don't have the courage to say that to you directly. And I'll just simply say, get ready for a meat grinder interview because that's what I would expect next. The next question: why do job interviews make people so nervous despite how smart and capable they are? Lack of experience is usually it. Most people don't grow up as little boys and little girls, and they say to themselves, oh, I want to interview lots of people. Oh, I want to go on lots of, you have no experience with interviewing. And thus you get into a situation you're not familiar with. And it has a psychological thing of, this is important. It's my career. I must get this job. And thus people kind of freak themselves out unnecessarily. The easiest way to get better at interviewing is to practice. If you've been on interviews and been rejected, I'll simply say that, let me just simply say, you know some of the deficiencies that you have. And there's some things that you can improve upon because you've been hammered already. And thus, learn your lessons and practice. Ayani, welcome from Indonesia. Whoa! Welcome. Glad to have you on. So learn your lessons and start practicing. I've got a video course at thebiggamehunter.us/interviews that'll take you to Udemy. It's like I want to say a $25 course that'll teach you how to interview better than most. It won't help you be better at what you do, but it teaches you a framework for interviewing that's very effective. I also have it available as a book on Amazon, as a paperback or Kindle book, called The Ultimate Job Interview Framework. That's the name of the course. That's the name of the book. So it's a smart way to interview, because one of the things I know, I'll just pause here for a second and say, Pavan wants to know where I'm from. And I'm originally from New York. I'm not living there any longer. I'm now in Western North Carolina in a city called Asheville. Sorry to interrupt there, folks, but I want to help my audience a little bit. They want to get to know me. So I'll just simply say that people get nervous when they're in unfamiliar territory, and they're afraid of being exposed. And they have this template in their mind from what they've heard from others that, It's hard, it's important, and it psychs them out. Practice will help you get better. And it's important to know what to practice, which is why I've offered this book and video course. It will help you become a lot better at interviewing. And then I've got my YouTube channel at jobsearchtv.com, which is kind of overwhelming. It's got almost 7,000 videos on it, with most of them around job search, and even my podcast, No BS Job Search Advice Radio, which is #1 in Apple Podcasts for job search. It's going to hit episode 2,200 in another 10 days. So I put out a lot of information. It isn't customized for you. And that's one of the reasons I coach people, is to tailor my work to be specific for your needs. But if you want to go through trial and error, go through my YouTube channel, my website, thebiggamehunter.us, or my podcast. All of them have lots of great content. Thebiggamehunter.us has all of it. And you can go through the blog, search the blog, and see if you can find what you need there. So why do they have problems? They psych themselves up because they're not familiar with what might take place on an interview. HR called and said I was the top performer in the interview, and also told me to sign some disclosure docs. But it's been a week and no update or response to my email since then. Rejected? Do I follow up? I don't know if you've gotten the documents. So let's work with the assumption. Well, I'll answer both. So let's say you've gotten the NDA and you've signed it, and you haven't gotten a response to your emails. What do? Now, think of it from the standpoint that, #1, you've signed it, and is this an NDA about the previous conversations, not the next conversations? If you haven't received them yet to sign, this is what you follow up about. As to say, I was told I'd be receiving a copy of the NDA to sign, non-disclosure agreement, and thus I haven't received it yet. I'm kind of surprised, since I was told I was the leading candidate coming out of the last round of interviews. When am I getting it? I want to keep moving forward with this opportunity. Put it back on whoever it was who reached out to you. It could be an overworked HR person. It could be the hiring manager. I don't know. But push for the agreement if you haven't gotten it yet. And if you have, push for the interview and when you might be hearing from them about next steps in the interview process. Let's see now. Oh, no comments yet. Let's go back to questions. I've got 2 more here. And question #1 is, how is there even a market for recruiters nowadays when employers can easily advertise jobs on job seeker websites? You heard that sigh. And I'll just simply say, websites, like newspapers before them, leave recruiters and hiring managers overwhelmed with garbage. When I worked in search, and I did that for what felt like 100 years. In fact, it was 40 plus years of doing recruiting. And I would walk in on a Monday morning to 200 resumes, and more would follow behind them. And most of the resumes were garbage. And I say that, I remember when I started my job search radio podcast, which I discontinued 2 years ago. At that time, it was the #2 podcast in Apple Podcasts for job search. My other one, No BS Job Search Advice Radio, has consistently been #1. Again, almost 2,200 episodes over more than 10 years doing the show. And you can subscribe at all the obvious places. But, episode #1 of Job Search Radio, I asked my first guest, and on a typical Monday morning, I walk into over 200 resumes. How many do you think typically might vaguely be qualified? And he guessed about 20, and my answer was 2. 2 out of 200. And major corporations get even more. So recognize that Part of the job of a recruiter, I'm assuming you're talking about an agency recruiter, is to filter and to screen and to save them time. That's what they're paying for, is for the time saving that a quality recruiter can do for a firm. And the time saving can also be about, and is preferred that it be about, reaching out to people who are not actively looking for work. You may not be aware of this, but employers have a bias toward what they call passive applicants. What that translates into, Helena, good to see you. Good morning. Master? Oh, no, not master. Employers have a bias toward passive applicants. And they define that as the people who are not on job boards, who are not actively looking for work. Their belief is that these people are busy doing their jobs, would never see the job description unless someone reached out to them. And thus, they want recruiters to find those people, to hunt those people. After all, recruiters are headhunters. They hunt the heads of people that might not be actively looking. So from the employer's perspective, why do they pay? Time saving, which translates into money saving. And they also want these people to be hunting people who would never see the job ad again. Now, LinkedIn does something different. And by the way, I'm LinkedIn member 7653 of the almost 740 million people on the platform. So I was there at the very beginning. And what LinkedIn does is allows them to reach out to people with mass emails called in-mails through the LinkedIn recruiter accounts. So they sell access to the entire database and the ability to in-mail you about opportunities or to network with you through in-mail. But still, there's just a lot for them to do. And they hire recruiters to save them the time. Let the outside recruiter handle it. And yes, they may find you on a job board, but they've also rejected hundreds of people to find that one person. It all takes time. And remember, recruiters at a company are screening resumes. They are interviewing people one-on-one, phone interview, video interview, in-person interview. They're meeting with hiring managers, they're scheduling. There's a lot for them to do. So the idea of outsourcing it to a third-party recruiter in many cases is really beneficial for them. Final question for today. By the way, if you've got a question for me, put it into chat. I'd love to hear from you. Should I apply for a job twice? I went in for an interview the first time I applied, and I know I did horrible in that interview. This was my first ever interview that I've been to. I don't know what kind of job, so I'm going to do a staff level position in a non-professional environment, and then positions in what are called white collar jobs. And that'll tell you a funny story. Non-professional positions, blue collar roles. I would contact the person that you interviewed with and tell them, I never did an interview before, and I know I stank up the joint. Can you give me another crack? Because I do have the qualifications that you're looking for. And see if by being sincere with them and owning up to your mistakes, they'll open up the door for you. White-collar jobs, professional positions, less likely that you have a chance, but give it a try and see whether they'll be responsive to you. Ask them whether or not, just simply say, I know I didn't do well. And if it's a company recruiter, they're probably not going to go any further. They may not even respond to your call or email, but try. It doesn't hurt. and make sure that when you're interviewed the next time, you are infinitely better than you were the first time. But I'll in honesty say, if you try, the statistical probability is low. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You want to. You want to prove that you're not as mediocre as you came across the first time. But if this was a firm that made you apply through an applicant tracking system, that's going to be hard to pull off. And I'm not going to go into details as to why. I'll just simply say firms of that size tend to be reluctant. So I'll just remind you as I wrap up the show today that I'm going to be starting doing these on Tuesday at 12 o'clock Eastern on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook on my Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter page on Facebook. If you have questions for me before the Tuesday show, you can email them to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. In the subject line, put the words office hours or career coach office hours. I'd love to help you. Also, if you're interested in my coaching, visit my website, thebiggamehunter.us, and look for the scheduling option that I have. And you can schedule a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching. I'd love to have a chance to talk with you. And connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. Hope you have a terrific day. And most importantly, be great. Take care.